So we've seen the full extent of this new version of Nemesis in Resident Evil 3 Remake, showing off all of his new abilities, not just in his base form, but also in his later feral transformation. So after having this information, where exactly does this iteration of Nemesis place among all of his different versions? So in this video, we'll be covering the evolution of Nemesis throughout the years, starting with his first appearance in the classic RE3, to the other cameos in Umbrella Chronicles, and the other side RE games, and all the way to the new Resident Evil 3 Remake. So come join me as we dissect on why this tyrant was such a terror when we had to go up against him. But before we do that, I just want to say my name's DeVuH, and I do cover a lot of Resident Evil and other survival horror content on my channel. So if you guys enjoy these types of videos, then please feel free to like and subscribe for more content like this in the future, and also possibly add me both on Instagram and on Twitter, where you guys can message me there personally at any time.
You want stars? I'll give you stars.
Okay, so let's first quickly cover his debut in the original Resident Evil 3, with the obvious being pointed out from the get-go was with the cover art and his name being in the main series logo. It was already evident on how much of an impact he would have in this game, because so far during this time in the series, we have yet to encounter an enemy of this magnitude, because with the opening sequence alone, once arriving at the RPD station, the tension was already set, with this tyrant setting up the bar high as to what to expect from this amazing antagonist. Because for those longtime Resident Evil fans, I'm sure we can all agree on the sheer terror we felt when we saw him for the first time, and having us choose a path on what to do was a difficult task due to the terror he gave off, which me personally at first, I always chose to run inside the RPD station, not knowing that I could have gotten the key card from Brad's dead body. And what's great about escaping Nemesis from his debut was that feeling of ease even for a second after walking inside the main hall of the police station, especially if we played the classic Resident Evil 2 and how that eerie but yet calming soundtrack would play. But of course here in RE3, Nemesis would give another small scare by banging on the main doors. Which I thought at one point he'd be able to barge inside, though this would only be a small taste on what he'd be like in this game, because he will follow us throughout Raccoon City, being that constant nightmare that we had to face, and in some instances, he'd even be using a rocket launcher, which was a new feature for a monster in the Resident Evil series at the time. Also, the overall impact he had not just in the gameplay experience, but also with the way he pushes the story forward was great, with a great example shown when he catches up to us in the cable car, or when he stops our escape at the clock tower area.
It's finally over. Huh?
And if we thought his base form was crazy enough when facing against him, well, like Mr. X before him, once he's released from his trenchcoat limiter, he would then proceed to be a much more versatile version of himself, but still having the same base moves, but with the added range of his tentacle attacks. But by the end, his later transformation would be the weakest we've seen today, which was him relegated into becoming a grotesque monster who moved really slow. With the only positive aspects that was shown was how durable he was, because he was able to take on at least 2 railgun shots, and even then he was still kicking. But in RE3 Remake, this later version of his mutation would be revamped and changed for the better, which I'll get to later on in the video. Anyways, as we move forward throughout the years, our encounters with Nemesis doesn't end there, because we can still go up against him in Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles, the rail shooter game that has us reliving some of the moments from the original game. But this time around, Nemesis was a watered down version of himself, which is understandable due to the gameplay mechanics and the lack of mobility for our characters, with most of his basic characteristics still shown off with his melee attacks and his use of his rocket launcher, but his later form would prove to show off a bit more this time around, where he used a couple of new attacks using his tentacles, which was a cool concept to see, though it was too bad on how it ended with Nemesis, because after fighting him on the rooftop of the RPD station, we just got to see him fall right off the building and that was it. But following on this trend of Nemesis being shown off, he again would be featured in Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City, but this time around, we're playing it in a very action-heavy shooter style that has deviated very far from the original version of gameplay in the RE series, which has pushed a lot of old school fans from the franchise away with this style of gameplay, but some may have gravitated towards this style due to the prevalence of the action-heavy shooter style of games that was present at this time.
Run!
Stars!
Then the next cameo Nemesis would make was in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, and how he was a playable character in that game, which was cool to see our beloved Tyrant transcend beyond his own franchise.
Stars! Nemesis.
But of course, last but not least, his latest version would be his best in terms of lore and story progression, and the sheer amount of new abilities he's shown. It was no wonder that in RE3 Remake, he was definitely the highlight of the game, which we can start off with his base form and see what the main differences we've seen compared to his many different iterations, starting with his trenchcoat limiter and how it looks more like a garment wrapped around his upper body, which initially his face was also covered, which was revealed after receiving enough damage from our characters. Though this same concept would still play out in the game, because if we cause enough damage during our encounters with him, his limiter little by little would appear to be shredded more and more, which was a cool small detail they've added. Also, Nemesis this time around would still retain that hulking stature and crazy speed, where he's able to run towards our characters and leap from one place to another. Also, this new version of him is able to do a plethora of new moves, ranging from his regular melee attacks, to his ability to drag our characters closer to him, and him being able to infect others with his anti-alpha parasite.
What the hell is it doing to them?
Also, the Umbrella Corporation has now given this tyrant an extra weapon to be used this time around, which at an early part of the game, we see him set fire to many things with his flamethrower. But with all these new additions, the kicker would be his next transformation, because unlike his classic RE3 version, where he would lose the top half of his limiter and still retain a humanoid form, because this time around in Resident Evil 3 Remake, the drastic change they made with him was shown here.
What the fuck?
Jill, what happened? Jill, come in!
Having him in a much more feral transformation, almost reminding me of William Bergen in the classic RE2, where he would be on all four legs and be more animalistic in nature, though this doesn't mean that his abilities would be impeded, because this new version of Nemesis is definitely one of the best moments in the game, which gave us a fresh new take on what to expect from him, especially with his new movesets, his overall design, and the way he's running around the battle arena. This of course would also play out story-wise, which we can see how Jill would be infected with the T-virus in both versions.
Interest. You've done me a big favor, miss.
Also, Nemesis now has a different arm after being injured, which in turn would give another aspect to his gameplay mechanics later on towards the end of the game. Also, can we just mention that the soundtrack that plays with his boss battle encounters are just outstanding, which is a remastered version of the classic soundtrack, but with an added twist to today's gaming style. Anyways, last but not least, Nemesis and his final transformation would also get an overhaul, because in the classic RE3, he was relegated to this monster here. But this time around, Nemesis would pull off a transformation in a gigantic proportion, which both literally and figuratively, because now he would infest a whole area, and this boss battle arena is no small space either.
Have you ever seen anything so incredible? The data on this would be worth millions. But, you know how it is. City's about to explode, and you can't put a price on life. Good luck!
With Nemesis towering over Jill Valentine, as he makes his final attempt to eliminate the last STARS member in Raccoon City, though all that would be stopped with this.
Come on! Next time, take the fucking hit!
Which in comparison, this railgun aspect plays out in the classic version this way. So let me know on which ending to Nemesis was better, the classic RE3 or the new remakes. Anyways, overall, the evolution of Nemesis throughout the years has been a great thing to follow, and I do hope we get to have more of an antagonist like him in the future RE titles, especially with the rumor of Resident Evil 8 coming out next year and Resident Evil 4 Remake released the year after. Anyways, what did you guys think about Nemesis overall, and which iteration of him was your favorite? Please let me know and why on the comment section down below. Also, if you guys enjoyed the content, then please feel free to like and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, you guys have a great rest of your day, and this is Hey DeVuH, and I'll see you guys on the next video.
Bitch, Kate.